Right.
Wait. Your laptop.
Is this one? Okay, so I think that I might have made the live notification a bit too late. So I'm just going to upload this as a video. So I'm just going to jump straight into the questions. But if anybody did manage to make it and you have any questions, then please feel free to post them. So is this the right page? Okay, so I have had someone sort out the questions that some of you have asked in the comments and things. So I'm not sure if all of these questions are covered, have been organized in here, but I'm going to try my best to get through as many as possible. So which ones should we start with, actually? Should we go through critical thinking first, maybe? Or assumptions, I know, was a big one. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to look through all of these, so if I make any mistakes, then sorry for that. Okay, maybe we should just go in order, actually. Okay, so this is the materials question that I know a lot of you have been having trouble with. So I think what you'll find with these materials question is that, first of all, make sure that you are extracting the correct piece of information, which is, it doesn't obviously matter that this is trousers or whatever. We know that this is the basic shape that Nathan wants and that we need 4 of these pieces. So the key thing with this is that they'll usually give you quite a lot of information in terms of unnecessary information, basically, because obviously you're not going to be buying all of these widths. So it's kind of up to you to pick which one the best option would be. Now, the way to do that is you need to think about, they're always asking you for like the lowest price. So in this case, we've got 50 by 38 centimeters and we need 4 of them. That is quite key. So you could either think about it as you could cut 15 times 4 and have like 60 be the long length and then 38 be the shorter length. Or you could have the 38 be the longer length multiplied by 4. So that would give, you know, roughly 160-ish. So that be the longer length and then 15 be the shorter length. So given that the widths come from like 100, 120, 160, obviously it's a bit more sensible to use this as the longer length. So that's the first thing. Establish which one you want as being for the elimination and then work out the rest of it. So quite often, if you look at other questions, it will be similar sorts of things. So it'll say like a piece of ribbon and then it'll say like 1 is 7. I think I saw one recently and 1 was like 14 or something like that. And you basically have to figure out like how you would join up these combinations. So you could have had like 14 be the longer length or 7 be the longer length or something like that. So establish that first of all. Once we've done that, obviously this comes in at less than 160. So it makes the most sense that we use this length here, right? You could obviously also split it up and do like, you know, 3 in there, 1 of those, but that doesn't make any sense. So we can just basically cut all of that out straight away. So now we're left with some very basic information, which is that we've got 160 centimeters as our width. Then on the length side, as we said, this would be our length side here, 15 centimeters. Now, up to there, I'm sure would be fine. The key thing is, as well, is they always have some sort of like condition where you can't, you know, join up the rest of it or whatever it is. In this case, it's that we have to have exact multiples of 10 centimeters when we buy it. But as I said, most of the time it's that you're missing out a bit of it. So in that case, we're doing £2.80 per meter. So for 15 centimeters, we obviously need to buy 20 centimeters of it. So that's just going to be 28 pence per 10 centimeters, 56p because it's times 2. So the answer would be B. Okay, so I think if you do come across these questions, you don't like jump in with your straight answer, I would say, because you might be tempted to just go in and, you know, think about these all as individual pieces. You really do need to think about it as what's the best way to use the materials given to you. I wish I could find this other question that I saw because it was such a good example of one. 1 second, let me see if I can. Oh, okay, sorry, I haven't been looking at the chat, but wait 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. Hi to everybody who's made it here. Please continue to leave some of the questions in here. I will just get them up and go through them once I've gone through these ones that were asked in the comments first, I think. So yeah, so approaching these questions, I will try and find that ribbon question later, but I think the key thing there was that you could have done either combining 2 bits of ribbon. So one was shorter, it was 7 centimeters, and one was 14 centimeters. And you could have either gone for doing the 14 plus the 7 to get a 21 length and then multiply that through, or you could have done 7 times the number of bits that you needed, or 14 times the number of bits that you needed. And you just needed to have a go at all 3, different methods and figure out basically which one was going to end up being the cheapest. So with these questions, the most important thing is you identify which length you're looking at. And in order to do that, you basically need to figure out the best way to combine these pieces together. So I'm going to try and find that question for you a bit later. So what? It's in there. Oh, it's in here. Okay. Well, apparently it's in here, so I'm sure we'll come across it. Right, so strengthen questions. Now, these strengthen questions really don't seem to come up as much anymore. And if there is a strengthen question, it is literally just the one in the whole exam. I'm sure as you guys have been going through these critical thinking questions, you'll notice that there's a lot more of kind of like a set method of working with all of the other critical thinking types. But with strengthen, you could really go in with anything to strengthen an argument. So it's not as, I think, obvious. So let's just have a look at this one together. So hopefully by now you've figured out how to kind of skim read through. So I'm just going to do that as we read along. So despite recent improvements to training, a study is suggesting that police are susceptible as a general public to having false beliefs about crime and punishment. So in this study, they basically, when asked about their views on crime-related myths, such as capital punishment, this doesn't matter, by the way. There's anything in sort of like quotations, whatever, I'm pretty much just ignore because it's never that relevant. But yeah, crime-related myths, because they are unsupported by research evidence, police were just as likely to endorse these misconceptions and were confident. So this is a worrying example of a scientist-practitioner gap. So this scientist-practitioner gap that they've said here, this is just a definition of what they've just talked about here, which is that police are believing these myths, they're endorsing these misconceptions, and they're confident. That's this gap here because it's based on nothing. And this term describes a situation where people do not, again, that's what follows is just explaining whatever this example was just a bit more succinctly. So studies have shown that training can permanently reduce the scientist practitioner gap. Police officers need more training. Hopefully it's obvious to you that this here is the main conclusion because we've got this word need. I know I go on about this all the time, but it's such a nice, quick, easy way to find a conclusion. So they need more training. Why? Because this would reduce the scientist practitioner gap. So anything to support this. With a strengthen question, it is really important that you go through every single option. As I said, because really you can bring in so many different points to strengthen an argument, there's no other way to go around it apart from going through all the answers. So A, the recruitment process for new police officers often fails to identify false beliefs held by applicants. We have to focus on training here. We have to show that this training is going to reduce the scientist practitioner gap. This is just basically kind of supporting the fact that these police officers are still falling for these myths, essentially. The majority of police officers do not support the capital punishment. As soon as you see that, that was just a small example given of a myth. So we're just going to go ahead and ignore that. Scientist practitioner gap is a common phenomenon in many professions. That doesn't matter. We're focused on police officers right now. Police training has often been criticized in the media for being insufficient. This would actually weaken it, obviously, because we're saying that training would reduce the scientist practitioner gap. This definitely leaves us with one answer. So we know this is correct, but let's just go in and see why. So we've just got that police officers whose views are not evidence-based are more likely to have complaints made against them by members of the public. So of course, views are not evidence-based. This is the same as this scientist practitioner gap where professionals are they're basically believing something without there being enough evidence to back it up, and we're having more complaints. Clearly, this is saying that training would reduce this, essentially. So I'm hoping that not many strengthened questions come up for you because, as I said, it's a bit of too much of a general one. But if it does come up, then just go through each option in turn. There's no real shortcut there, but there will definitely be one that's really obvious. Okay, I'm just going to have a look at if there's been any questions. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through the other questions that were in the comments, and then I'll probably go back and just see if there's any additional questions being asked. Say 25, this one. Was it this one? Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Who asked for that question? I feel like I saw this quite a lot, actually. Oh, okay. Sean Dillon. Okay, cool. So question 25, this is, all about a process question. So I do like to look at the question first, just because when you've got a lot of information like this, when you read through the first time, it's really tempting to just care about everything because, you need to jot down as much as you can. You need to kind of extract and highlight important things. But if you read through the first time, then look, you've got 80 pence, grams, you've got pounds, you've got all sorts of information. And if you read this question first, then you know what to ignore that first time round, and it can just save you a little bit of hassle, a little bit of brain energy. So assuming that I do not buy any more dough than necessary, what proportion of the dough that I buy each day do I have to throw away? So we're looking for how much do we buy, and then how much are we throwing away for some reason. So then going through, we're running a bakery. We sell two sizes of loaves, small loaves, 240 grams, sell for 80p. So we can kind of assume this is not going to be relevant based on the question. This is kind of what I mean. It just saves you kind of having to read all of that, but it's a small little thing, but all of these things obviously do add up. Large loaves, 400 grams. I buy dough ready made at the start of each day. Small boxes are 5 kilograms cost, and then large boxes are 15 kilograms. Baking process causes loaf to lose 20% of the weight of the unbaked dough. And we're selling 40 small loaves and 50 large loaves. I buy enough dough to make these and then throw away unused. So first things first is this. We need to do this calculation. So 20% of the weight is lost through baking. So if the small loaf ends up being 240 grams, that's 80% of what was the original. So obviously divide that through. So it would have been originally 300 grams for that original unbaked dough. And then for the 400 gram larger one, it would have been 500 grams originally. We then want to multiply that up here. So 40 small loaves for 300 grams. That would mean 12 kilograms of dough is used, 500 grams, 50 loaves, 25 kilograms. So we're looking at a total of 37 kilograms. We can't obviously buy it in this exact amount. So we would just have to do 2 of these and then 2 of these. That would give us 40. So essentially we are throwing away 3 over 40. It's a bit of a gross calculation. So I'd probably just simplify that a bit and say that is 1.5 over 20. And then obviously times that by 5 to give 7.5 as the final percentage. So look for any shortcut possible. Just work through this step by step. Just don't let yourself get too panicked on these. They're usually not too difficult in terms of what they want you to do. It's more about finding the right information, making sure you're doing the right process on the right question. So, okay, cool. So hopefully that is clearer for you. I might have gone through that a bit too quickly, but yeah, just read the question first, go through, apply accordingly, and just make sure you've looked at the correct information. Okay, so what was the next question on the list? Shall I just go with this one? I don't think anybody's particularly requested this one. That's the only thing. Oh, okay.
It's the original TSA thing.
Is it on here? Okay.
So they've got all the comments there.
What score did I get? I saw this question actually, and I didn't say just because I am quite a lot older than all of you guys taking the test now. So my TSA was quite a while ago, and I've just been sort of like teaching it and things since. So I didn't think it would be, that useful for you. But yeah, it was in the high 40s, I will say. Oh, was this the 2000? I think that was the question 18, wasn't it? Okay, so going back to, was it in here? I might have lost it. Okay. Oh, okay. So right. Okay. So time zone. Yeah, I feel like time zone, time constraint questions. These come up so often, and just by getting used to it, just some familiarity with it, can just save you so much time because you immediately know how to kind of set the question up. So this is one of those things I would definitely kind of have a look at in advance with these time zones. Again, with these ones, it's never anything complicated. The maths is always like, well, it's not even going to be maths. It's really just about, adding hours and making sure you're working from the right time. Always draw this out though. And I would kind of just draw this whole thing out again, actually. So, because it's all +1 relative to this Pacific time zone, but as you can see, it's referring to the city and the time zone. So, right, Tim and Jerry are business partners. Which one of the following is true? That's what we're trying to figure out. The relationship between Jerry and Tim arriving in Oklahoma. So Tim lives in New York, which is an Eastern time. So New York over here, Tim, and this is +3. And then Jerry lives in San Francisco, Pacific time. There we go. So San Francisco, Jerry, and this is basically 0. And then Mountain would be Salt Lake City. And then that's +1. And then we've got Central time zone. Yeah. Okay. So, Central time zone is where they're trying to end up, actually. So that's Oklahoma. There we go. So Oklahoma, and that's going to be +2. Okay. So now that you've drawn this all out, all you need to do is just take one of them one by one. So Tim's setting off at local time, 10 a.m. So that's in New York, 10. Always stick to the same time zone and then convert it. I find that to be the better way to do it. So he's missed this for a flight. Okay, so he's getting on a 12 p.m. flight. So basically this was completely irrelevant. We're starting at 12 p.m. and it's a 4-hour flight. So he's basically in New York time. He's arriving, of course, at 4 p.m. But it is to Oklahoma. So we just want to -2 from that. So he would be arriving in Oklahoma at 2 p.m. Now, Jerry, on the other hand, is traveling by train for 2 hours to Salt Lake City, leaving at 6 a.m. So if he leaves here at 6 a.m., then he's arriving at Salt Lake City at 8 a.m. Again, stick to the same time zone. And then he's boarding a bus from Salt Lake City to Oklahoma, where he's arriving 6 hours later. So what time? Well, actually, no, let's actually move over here. Sorry, I feel like that's actually not the best way to do it. So 9 a.m. here, because it's 8 a.m. arrival San Francisco time. So yeah, in Salt Lake City, that would have been 9 a.m. And then he's taking the bus. So 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. This doesn't feel right, actually. I must have gone wrong somewhere. Oh, he's arriving 6 hours later. Sorry. Okay, so I think I might need to start again. This will happen. But, let's not be disheartened by this. Okay. Just goes to show, no matter how much you practice, always going to be something in there to confuse you. Okay, so let's try this again. So we've got, I'm going to draw it out one more time. Okay, so we've started off San Francisco. Let's just do Jerry because he's the one that we've just gotten confused. Well, I've just gotten confused. So he's traveled by train for 2 hours to Salt Lake City, leaving San Francisco at 6 a.m. So he's arrived in San Francisco at 8 a.m. and then in Salt Lake City, that would be equivalent to 9 a.m. And then he's boarded a bus from Salt Lake City to Oklahoma. He's arrived 6 hours later. So he would have arrived in Mountain time. Oh, I see. 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 3 p.m. And then we have to add on another hour. So he's arriving at 4, basically, in Central time to add on another hour here. And then on the Tim side, he left, what do you call it? New York at 12 p.m. It took him 4 hours. So he arrived at 4 p.m. in New York minus an hour. So he would have arrived 3 p.m. in Oklahoma. So Tim has arrived 1 hour before Jerry, making the answer D. Okay, sorry for that confusion. I don't know quite what I did there, actually. But yeah, just draw it out. And as I said, no maths involved here. And if you know you've gone wrong, just start again. You can ask for scrap paper. So I would just kind of scrap it and start again. There's no point sticking to it if you know that there's if you know that there's something gone wrong. Okay, so let's carry on. Okay. So a lot of people have been asking about these ticket questions, actually. So I think with the ticket questions, the key thing to do in order is first of all figure out, right, who are the people who you have to buy tickets for. So in this case, we've got 4 teachers, 20 students, and then obviously we've got 8 who are aged 15 and 12 are age 16. So all that's saying is that 12 students are adults and 8 of them are children. So in total, we're looking at 8 children and then 12 plus the 4 teachers, so 16 adults. Okay, so what you'll see with these ticket ones is that they always have the standard adult and child tickets. We can obviously just ignore this one here. And then they always give you options for group tickets. So I feel like this is where people get confused, because it's kind of like, okay, how do we know which one's the best out of these? So the simplest way to do it is just compare one against the other and then knock it out until you've got the cheapest option. So starting with this family ticket here, this is 2 adults and 2 children, right? So work it out first of all with no deal how much that would be, right? So 2 adults would be $60, 2 children $40, so it would be $100. This is the best option compared to the normal ticket. So we definitely want to use this over a normal. Now we compare family ticket to group ticket. So with 8 people, including at least 2 children, so using the most kind of cost-effective option, it will be 2 children plus 6 adults. So compared to this family ticket, we're getting 4 additional adults. Now, if we did that with the normal tariff, that would be $120 extra dollars. So we'll just see, is this gap here, the marginal price difference, is it less than $120? Which it is, because obviously if it were $120, it would be $210, but instead it's cheaper. So this one, better than this one. So now we want to focus on this and the super group. So the only difference between the group ticket and the super group ticket is that super group is any 8 people and the group ticket is at least 2 children, and the super group is more expensive. So ideally, we want to use this one up as much as possible. And then if we need it, we can look at this one or one of the other options, basically. So given that we've got 8 children, 16 adults, we need to buy here, basically, with this one, if we buy one of these, so 8 people, so this would cover 6 adults and 2 children, which would mean that in total, how many would we actually need? So we could get away basically with just buying, okay, so we don't even need to do this combination, right? Because this is 24 people total. And at least 25% of them, 2 of the 8 are children. So we can just actually buy 3 of these tickets straight away. So that would allow us to do 175 by 3, which would be 525. So with this ticket option, just always use this as your base, like the initial tariff prices, the adult and the child, and then calculate how much it should cost, and then look at the marginal price differences between each ticket type, and then see if it would be a better deal, therefore, of which of the group tickets is the best deal, and then try to maximize that use. And then if you need to use one of the others, obviously then you go to the others, but always maximize that first is the best way to do it. And the same thing applies for, like, you know, whenever it's talking about the theater or cinema or whatever. Okay, cool. So I just want to maybe pause and look at some of these other questions here. Is there anything? Yeah, so I've seen a lot of people asking about these kind of, you know, exam stress. How is the TSA going to go tomorrow? I know all of you are doing it at different times tomorrow. I think in Korea here, people are doing it a bit earlier. But I think that the TSA, first of all, like good score-wise, obviously it's going to be dependent on the year. But I think you're not going to, if you look at, I don't know if you've all been on like the admission statistics data, and I don't know if you've had a look at the applicants kind of getting an interview, and it shows you each applicant and their TSA score. And if you look, there definitely have been cases on the extreme ends where they've not got like the best TSA score but still received an interview, and vice versa. I think I think somebody who got like, 78 or 80 even still didn't get called in for an interview. And then somebody who got maybe like 50 something in the TSA was called in for an interview. So first of all, it's impossible, I think, to tell precisely, what, if it's not going to absolutely guarantee, but obviously there is this myth about it that, if you get a certain score, then you pretty much just have to go in and walk the interview. And I personally still do think that is largely true. But the TSA, it's like it's going to be a difference of 1 or 2 questions at the end of the day. So I think the best thing to do is just, you've done all the preparation. If you've looked at all the questions, at this point, you've literally, the best thing you can do for yourself is just to be really calm, confident. And I think you'll notice, especially with these critical thinking questions, I do think it's like a mindset thing. You just go in and you think, right, I definitely know the answer here. There's only one answer here. I'm not going to confuse myself by thinking this could be the answer. Don't kind of worry between 2 answers. So for example, let's actually have a look at this. When you're answering something like this, let's say, underlying assumption. I know people find these ones tricky. I mean, they are as well. But in the 1920s and 30s, there were successes for extremist parties in elections across Europe. So several of these parties formed governments and were directly involved in starting the Second World War. In recent elections, extreme parties were particularly successful. It's possible that this dangerous situation will get worse. Our schools must teach children about the link between extremist policies, politics and war in order to reduce the likelihood of future wars. So first of all, our conclusion is really obvious here. So just tell yourself really obviously, right, our schools must teach children about the link between extremist policies and war. Why? It's in order to reduce the likelihood of future wars. So then kind of try to explain it to yourself. So, right, why do they think that this is going to reduce the likelihood of future wars? What would this be based on? Well, their reasoning basically is not saying it's right, by the way, with assumptions. It doesn't have to be right technically. So what they're saying is that extremist parties have been successful in elections. And with extremist parties being successful in elections, they have now triggered wars such as the Second World War. So just to reorganize that a little bit, we're basically saying the only way to prevent war is to get our children to learn about the link between extreme politics and war, so that they can basically prevent this from happening. So now we go through the options confidently. So events in history inevitably repeat themselves in the future. I really tend to stay away from things that just say things like inevitably and never, and things like this. I'm not saying 100% of the time, but the vast majority of this is never really the thing. So events in history inevitably repeat themselves in the future. That doesn't matter. This isn't specific about what our conclusion's arguing. If we wanted this to be correct, then this would be helpful for our argument, but our argument isn't based on this. It would be useful if we could say, yeah, just because the extremist party had a role in starting Second World War, this could happen again. Of course, that would help us, but it's not essential to our argument. So it is not the job of parents to teach children about politics. Again, there's not really any discussion about that. Let's not bring in random ideas that don't belong in this text. I'm certain that's not it. Teaching about the link between extremist politics and war will cause fewer people to vote for extremist parties. This is where we want to be, really, because if this is true, then the whole argument can make sense, right? Because we're saying teaching them is going to prevent extremist politics, people to not vote for the extremist parties. And by not voting for the extremist parties, there will no longer be these, or reduce the likelihood of wars, basically. So we're pretty confident on this one. Again, you can go through the rest if you want to. So extremism is the main reason that countries go to war. This is not what our argument is based on. We're just saying that there is some direct involvement in the Second World War. So let's confidently delete that. And then the recent election success of extremist parties will continue to grow. This might be a reason why we have to get on with it and teach our children about the link, but it's not necessary to our argument. So really, if you do take the time to do that and walk yourself through and make yourself really confident about it, it doesn't waste that much time as you would think, because it actually wastes more time if you're kind of thinking, okay, I'm not sure about this, I don't know what to do here. That can actually be worse. So when you're in the exam tomorrow, don't second guess yourself. Second guessing yourself will definitely be the way that you lose essential marks. On the problem solving side, it definitely tends to be misreading the question, not doing a condition correctly, or doing what I did earlier and just basically confusing yourself and then, not starting again and doing it properly. But on the critical thinking, I feel like confidence plays such a large part in this. That's why, it's kind of like a bit of fake it till you make it. If you know what's going on, then just absolutely just go for it, basically. Just going to carry on unless anybody posts about anything particular. Did I just skip one? Yes. Okay, so another assumption question. I think this is the one that I didn't really go through in the previous one. So let's, again, get into the mindset, if you can, just like try it out now, of going through and being just so confident in looking for this answer. You know exactly how to do it. So let's just go through and read. So school science lessons were once a place of bangs and flashes and stuff. Few people ever died. Now activities that once made science fun are rare because of health and safety. It's been reported that governments are now concerned about decreasing the percentage of students enrolling on science courses at universities. Therefore, if they do wish to reverse this trend, i.e. get more people to enroll, they need to take steps to curtail the pervasive health and safety culture. So let's just summarize that and make that really clear to ourselves in our heads. So we want to, the conclusion is that we want to reverse this trend and get more people into science courses. The reasoning for that is, in order to do that, we need to get rid of this health and safety culture. And the reasoning for that is because, well, that's the assumption that we're looking for. So without looking at the answers, really, it's got to be something to do with how this has a direct link in stopping people from wanting to basically take up science. So we'll go through and eliminate confidently. So it does not matter if only a few people died as a result of school science lessons. I hope this is so obvious to all of you that this is not the correct answer. This has no relevance whatsoever to the argument that we're trying to make. This is not useful. Doing exciting activities in science lessons leads to a higher take up of science courses at university. What do we think about this one? I mean, if we look at the arguments that we were making, which was that getting rid of this health and safety culture would result in more exciting activities. And this will then, if they wish to reverse this trend, as in this will lead to a higher take-up of science courses at university. They're basically nicely establishing that link for us, which is exactly what we want, really. So we know that this is going to be it. But let's have a look at the others. So there is no reason to ban science practicals that are only minimally dangerous. Again, I hope this is really obvious to you that this can't be the answer, because it doesn't, I mean, like, who cares if there's no reason? It doesn't matter, right? So this is just kind of, again, supporting, let's do this, because who cares? There's no reason to ban it if it's only minimally dangerous. Therefore, if they do wish to reverse this trend, they need to take steps. It supports them. Health and safety legislation has only had a negative effect on education. Maybe the case, it could be, but that doesn't relate to take up of, enrolling on science courses at university. Again, not very useful. And science is only fun if it's dangerous. Again, may be the case, but this doesn't link to our higher take up of science courses at university. So all in all, doing that should really, reading that out and like kind of thinking that to yourself, confidently eliminating those answers, it really shouldn't take you more than, I think, less than a minute is really the goal, right? That's what we want to do. Okay. I hope these assumption ones are what everybody wanted, actually. But yeah, if you haven't solved these before, then, let's, I think, take the time to solve them now as we go along, maybe, and then see if your kind of thoughts align with what we're doing here. So assumption question. So thankfully, logicians did not devise the British Constitution. Yep, it has evolved through the work of ordinary people who've adapted the government of the country to meet the needs of their age. They have always preserved sufficient flexibility to permit such adaptation. All of this is kind of quite unnecessary stuff. None of it is a conclusion, but we'll go on. And we have avoided a lot of problems because we've never been guided in anything we have done by logic. So clearly the person writing this has a problem with logic being the way that we make decisions. If you study the period of history from the Civil War, you will see the benefits of not making the Constitution too rigid by writing it down. It proves how much there is to be said for ignoring logic and following common sense. With these, whenever with critical thinking questions, I do really like to think about it as if you're kind of arguing with a friend, because it can help you to be really confident in what you're saying. So, you know, basically what this person or this friend is saying to you is that, oh, so good that logic didn't dictate the British Constitution, so good that we're ignoring logic and instead common sense, because if we'd followed logic, we would have gotten a different result that wouldn't be as good as the one that we have now. Good thing we're following common sense, essentially, right? Like, forget all of this kind of complex language and forget all of this kind of, you know, example about the Civil War, George, who cares, you know? The point they're trying to make is, you know, thank goodness for logic. So then with that in mind, let's go through these answers here. So A is saying, as the British Constitution was devised by logicians, it cannot be adapted to meet contemporary needs. So if your friend's coming out and saying, you know, thank goodness, not logic, common sense, then I feel like this one, it should be quite clear to you what this is not really kind of addressing the main crux of the argument, which is this about logic and common sense. Ideally, we want both of those ideas discussed in one of these answers. But yeah, contemporary needs, this is not relevant. This is not important. We don't care. The need to write down the British Constitution. I mean, without even finishing that, hopefully you can get that that is not going to be an essential assumption that is necessary for our argument. C, Britain was fortunate that its constitution evolved flexibly as a result of the work of ordinary people. Now, this kind of sentence where they just kind of like pick something out from the text, because if you look, it does say that up here, doesn't it? Pretty much exactly. So they have always preserved sufficient flexibility to meet such adaptation, and this is because of the ordinary people. Assumptions you can't really pick out in the text. The point of the assumption is that it's not mentioned, but it's something that we have to assume. So not saying that that's the best way to eliminate this, but that could be another way that you could consider if you're struggling. If it exists in here, generally it's not going to be an assumption, because then it kind of defeat the point, right? So D, it is not possible to follow both logic and common sense because they will always produce different results. So this is nice, exactly what we want. So if this, think about it, if this wasn't true, then this guy's argument would kind of fall apart, right? Because he's saying, thank goodness for common sense and not logic. But if it is the case that logic and common sense could get the same result, then, you know, kind of defeats the point. And it is always right to ignore logic and follow common sense because such a course of action produces the best results. I mean, that's taking it a bit too far, I think. We're not talking about, you know, best results or things. We're just talking about what happened in this particular case. So with assumption, when in doubt, think about those things that I've just mentioned. Maybe just, it has to be something that exists to help the argument. It has to be something that without that, it's going to not make any sense. And it usually will not be provided for you in the passage. So you have to come up with it yourself. But you can see like that little bit of confidence where it can get you would really, you know, be important. I also, just to take a little breather, but also just to mention, I think if you are taking the TSA, it all really does depend which degree you guys are all going for. I think definitely for E&M, this is, I would say, a lot more important on the problem solving side almost. Obviously, it's important to get, you know, as close to full marks as possible, but just from what I'm not going to say that this is like official stuff, but just from what I've heard from tutors in the past and things is that E&M problem solving can definitely be like, you know, just because obviously the degree itself contains a lot more maths and stuff, but yeah, I would prefer to get 25 in the problem solving and then maybe like 20 or 19 even on the critical thinking, or the other way around. But yeah, and then whereas I think PPE, like a good balance, obviously. But yeah, if you guys are doing really well in one of the sections, that is, I would say, just as really, really like a lot better than just getting kind of, you know, 18 in each. So definitely play to your strengths if you can. If you're feeling a bit concerned and you know you're really good at some of the questions, then I wouldn't ignore those questions just because you're confident in it, because it's one of those things where that can really be like the thing that gets you a certain, like a solid number of marks. So definitely revise the things that you're good at as well. But yeah, did I just say 25 for problem solving? I don't mean get 25, by the way, just closest to 25 would be better for, I'm just saying if you had to choose between 18 or like 25, in problem solving, and then fewer in critical thinking, that could be better. So yeah, you do get individual scores in each. Right, I think, is this the last assumption question? Okay, let's just run through this really quickly. Again, let's just go in and just try and solve this as quickly as possible. It'd be good to have a little timer or something on the page. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and then I'll just, have a look at the other stuff. Okay, so let's try and solve this as quickly and as confidently as possible. So car owners must have insurance in case of accident. Home owners need insurance in case of injury. Insurance is not necessary for dog owners. Any injury by a dog is compensated by the court if they're taken to court. Therefore, we need to pass a law to make insurance compulsory for every dog owner. This is obviously the conclusion for a number of reasons. Obviously, easiest thing, I know I go on about this so much, but the must in there is telling us that is the conclusion. Assumption questions, it is really important to identify the conclusion, by the way. Any injury would be paid for by the insurance company, not long-suffering taxpayers. So these two sentences are the key ones. So again, let's reorganize. Imagine you're kind of arguing that out with a friend. So you're basically saying to your friend, it's ridiculous that these dogs don't have insurance made as a law for them, because if that were a law, then it would be paid for the insurance company instead of us, right? So that's the argument they're making. Now let's go through and see what would best we need for this argument to make sense. So dog owners would find it hard to pay for insurance. That's not, if you said that to your friend in response, they'd be like, what? Okay. All insurance companies would want to participate in the scheme. It doesn't really matter if all do, as long as one or there is available insurance. All dog owners would obey the law. Of course, we need this to be true, because if they don't, then the long-suffering taxpayers will continue to pay for these dogs. So it would defeat the point of passing the law. So, I mean, obviously, don't assume too much just because it's a law. You think that, yeah, definitely people are going to listen. Obviously not the case. Most injuries are caused by illegal breeds of dogs. There's always one ridiculous answer in there. And, I think most of you could see which one the ridiculous one is, but I think the rest of them can also be, you have to try and find the ridiculous point or the reason they're not important or the reason they don't matter to really be confident. Injured parties can afford to take dog owners to court. Not really relevant to the argument at all. That's not the point. We, the taxpayers, do not want to pay for dog injuries. So yeah, nice and quick. Hopefully that has cleared some stuff up for you. So hopefully that this is really clear. Okay. So looking at these comments, I'm seeing like spatial questions. I'm really hoping that you guys don't get any spatial questions this year, actually, because it was taking up a lot of the paper until literally 2020. But I think maybe because they went to computer-based, but 2020 and 21 don't contain any spatial questions. Actually, maybe they found that was the better way. But before that, it was like 4 or 5 questions in the paper. So it doesn't officially say there will be no spatial questions, but I think that it's not impossible. But yeah, as somebody's just said, it is back to paper. So don't be surprised. Honestly, if you're struggling with the spatial because there isn't really much that you can do to kind of as a technique for spatial, I think, as Thompson Joy is saying here, if you just do all the spatial questions, make sure you're familiar with how to approach them. But I've seen people in the exam, cut out the paper and rip it up and make a cube and stuff like that. And you can do that. There's nothing against that. So, at the end of the day, just draw it out. Spatial, you can either visualize it really well, or you're like me and you really, I struggle to visualize stuff when it comes to spatial stuff. So if there's a quick, easy way of just ripping up a bit of paper and doing it, that's honestly what I would do. Unless it's something that's kind of come up before, then you can kind of use the method that you used before as well. So what else? But yeah, I can't believe it's TSA time already. I'm sure that you are all super well prepared. The question paper is paper-based this year, yeah. So just also leave yourself 5 minutes at the end to fill in the answer sheet. Remember, I've heard horror stories of people shifting their answers by 1, and then that can result in every single answer, being misplaced. So it's like one of those multiple choice question papers. There is an answer sheet example on the main website, so check it out if you haven't seen it. But yeah, you do have to circle the things for each question, circle A to E. So that definitely takes at least 5 minutes, I would say, because you've got to do proper coloring in the shading in the circles. So either do it, I personally do it as I went along, but then in the last 5 minutes, go back and just make sure that you've done it all and star the ones that you're checking again as well. That's useful. Oh yeah, so there's this whole argument that, for critical thinking versus problem solving, or just doing one before the other, and then, or just like running through the whole paper. I think it honestly depends on what you want to do. I personally really feel like one advantage of the critical thinking paper, doing the critical thinking section first, is that I think it's going to be the case for most of you, is that it doesn't take you as long as the problem solving questions on average. So if it is the case that you can get the critical thinking questions done in less than 45 minutes, say like 40 minutes, then what it means is that for the remainder of the time, every time you've got 50 minutes left, right? Then every time you work through 5 problem solving questions, you check the time and you say, right, 10 minutes done. Then I know I'm okay. If you've only done, let's say, like 3 questions after the 10, you know you need to speed up a bit. But whereas if you go in order, I feel like just because you've done 5 questions, it doesn't mean that every 10 minutes you should have completed a certain number, because they all take different lengths, if that makes sense. So I think just in terms of time management, I do think it's kind of easier just to do one section at a time. And well, the sections aren't separate, but if you look at the paper, if you've looked at the first paper, then it basically does 3 problem solving, 3 critical thinking, 3 problem solving, 3 critical thinking, kind of in that order. But it often starts with like critical thinking 1 question, and then problem solving question 2, and then it does 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So it's kind of easy to just go for to do all the questions in one go if you wanted to, because it's not like you're flipping back and forth and things. I guess the fear there is maybe that you like kind of fill in the answer sheet wrong. But yeah, so I definitely would say that time management wise, doing the critical thinking questions, I would say, is preferable. Also, lots of people get so tired towards the end of the exam, and when you've got like 20 minutes left and you still have 15 questions, and then half of them are critical thinking, half of them are problem solving, and you're going to have to think of a new method for each problem solving, and it's just going to be, I feel like mentally it's a mental game as well, right? Is the point of it. If you guys all had 3 hours to do this, I'm sure you could get very close to full marks. So are there any other questions that anybody would like to go through? I feel like if you are already familiar with the question types, that is probably the best thing to do at the moment. And also just really take some time to revise all the questions that you are good at. Please don't forget that having a really specific, like some questions that you come out and you're like, I definitely got that right, is so reassuring. Why is the score conversion so much higher in older papers? So that score conversion is based on how many people are scoring high marks, and then slightly to do with the difficulty, but honestly the difficulty is very similar. So it basically just means more people are doing better. So that's why you now need more marks to get the same converted score. So when that exam started, there weren't that many practice papers. People didn't really know how to revise for it, but obviously now there's a lot more information, which is why a similar score would get you a lower converted score, basically. But I don't think it's too different. It's a matter of like 2, 3, 4-ish questions. So let's see, what is the essay or section 1 more important? The essay is not used in the algorithm. They used to kind of rank you. So I don't know if you know this, but if it's for Oxford that you guys are applying, then they basically convert all of your scores, let's say for GCSE and for A-level predicted grades, and then for the TSA, and they basically give you like a 1 score, and then they kind of like rank you in the system. And that's how colleges know how to like pull people out of the pool and stuff. So the section 2, the essay, obviously can't be converted into a comparable number as easily, so they don't use that in like the ranking system. Are newer papers supposed to be harder than older papers? I did it in reverse order. I found the older ones a lot easier. So you're saying that you went from newer to older? In that case, that could be because you practice more. But they're not like significantly different, to be honest. Like there's always like a couple of weird questions in some. and not in others. But I would say in the newer papers, there's a lot of main conclusion questions. So that is always useful because that's like a good solid, the main conclusion ones, I really hope nobody gets wrong tomorrow because that's going to be a really nice, easy 6-7 marks that you don't have to worry about. Yeah, if you went backwards, I think it might be because you improved rather than it being easier, to be honest. Okay, sorry, I'm missing some stuff here. Could I go over 2020? How should you prepare for problem solving now? I think problem solving, definitely just go through all the different question types, and the questions that, like the ones that take you a shorter amount of time, you have to tell yourself, let's just like do this quickly and move on. Like, don't spend equal amounts of time on each problem solving question. That is one really easy way to run out of time at the end. Question 37, 2016. So I just actually have to find that paper. 2016. Sorry, just gonna take a minute here. Have I missed any questions? I think. Okay, and then illustrating the principal questions. Yeah, okay. I would have to find all of them as well. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to take up all of your time because I'm sure you all want to go and like do some papers and revise and sort of run through the things you got wrong and right. So yeah, I think, you know what, I'll definitely, anything posted in here, I'll definitely that you're definitely I'll definitely address and like post either a written answer or a quick video. Don't you need at least 42 out of 50 now? 42 out of 50, not, I think E&M you need higher than PPE, that's for sure. But it's just going to be the top 15% of exam takers for E&M. I think it's like the top 20% for PPE. So whatever that would be. And just bear in mind, everyone who takes a TSA, obviously they're applying for different degrees. So you're not competing against everybody in that cohort, if that makes sense. So you don't like, think of yourself entirely on that scale. I think 38 plus, and then the rest of your application matters more for the interview. And then they might take it into account more afterwards, basically. Yes, sorry. Yeah, you do have to upload them in your UCAS application. So if you haven't, then I think you should double check with your teacher if possible. Okay, so I think I'm going to collect up all the questions that people have sort of requested and post kind of answers and questions to afterwards. So oh yeah, and then I think there's some sort of a Discord. I don't know. I don't know.
The Discord will be going up.
The Discord will be going up. Yeah. Question 24 in 2014. I didn't actually kind of prepare these questions myself, so I'm gonna just quickly try and find it. Am I going to upload any interview prep videos? Yes, definitely. I think regardless of how all of you do tomorrow, I would definitely just, Thomas's comment. I think definitely just move straight onto interview. Like, who cares? It's always going to be useful to know all that stuff. Either it's going to be useful for your A-level exams because it's all stuff relevant in there, or it will just, basically it just means you have an easier time of it later on. So no, I would definitely just move on to interview prep. Just, shake it off tomorrow, no matter what. But really hoping everybody does really well, obviously. And at least although I have heard the interviews are online this year as well, which is a bit of a shame, but yeah. So all of these questions that you've posted, I will, I don't want to waste too much time trying to find it and then share it with you. So I think I'll just collect them all. And as I said, and I'll just post answers to it, showing like quick ways or things. So what's the order of the question types? Generally in every year, I think I mentioned this before, is you will get like critical thinking 3 and then problem solving 3, and it just alternates. Will you be notified if you don't get an interview? Yes. And usually you're notified you're notified at the same time as the people who get interviews. So yeah, your college will email you basically. Yeah. I'm really interested what everybody applied to for colleges and what degrees and things as well. So I think if there is a Discord, then it'll be really interesting to see, and maybe see how you guys kind of, what you've all kind of applied for and where you've applied for. And I was actually at Keble College. So if anybody's applied to Keble and wants some specific advice about tutors or what it's like there, then yeah, definitely. Oh, Hartford is a great college. I really rate it, especially for E&M. They have a really big group there. But yeah, so I think I'm probably just gonna. Oh, Keble E&M. Yes, that was exactly my college, but a long time ago. So yeah, that's exciting. Oh, I think it's the same tutors there still, actually. There's 2 tutors, Casby and John, and they are both so lovely. So St. John's Geography. Oh yeah, St. John's super nice facilities always. They're so rich. What score do you need to have? Oh, there's so many people in M. Loving that. Okay. Do you need to have at least for an interview? I think basically you're not going to get cut out for an interview for, as I said, I've seen really extreme cases. It depends on the rest of your application. But if you're scoring the top 15%, i.e. like 40 out of 50-ish, then that should be definitely interview worthy. Magdalen, E&M, Magdalen's super nice college as well. I don't think I know too many E&Mers from Magdalen though, actually. But yeah, and also didn't have any tutorials at Magdalen, so don't know any of the tutors there. But yeah, I think Hartford's got some really lovely tutors as well, actually. So yeah, definitely any kind of like after, I think all of you, if you can just get through the TSA tomorrow, you know, try your best, go through those question types one more time, practice that timing, figure out what it is you're going to do. Easy and manageable. Yeah, the amount of abuse you will get at university for it being easy and manageable over the 3 years is going to be immense, but it is, I won't lie. But it depends on which modules you choose. Okay, so yeah, I think just revise all of that, I think, and don't try and, you know, don't psych yourself out. Confidence, be super, super confident in what you're doing. I'm sure if you just go in there and you're like, I know this answer, it's going to get you through quicker. It's going to get you to be more accurate at it. Keble, well, the interview is very massy. So like there's basically, you're going to have a separate interview for management and economics, and the economics exam is the same as the PP exams, but also, oh, Kevin, you met Kevin? He was my tutor actually for economics. Yeah, he would be the interviewer. There's usually more than one in the room, but yeah, the economics one is quite mathsy, and then the management one is less mathsy. I'm constantly guessing only 70s. What are my odds of getting over 75? I think if you're at that point, you need to work on the timings, I think. Just figure out which questions that you can save time on to give yourself more time to kind of work through and process the other ones. At this point, just really try and isolate, I think, which questions you're getting wrong. Is it the same thing every time? Then, you know, oh, well, there's so much Keble E&M. Keble was like I thought people didn't really go for it because it's like not a traditionally like Oxford looking building. But I personally think the architecture is nice, obviously. But Brasenose is super, super well located and pretty. It's not timing that I finished with 30 minutes. Oh, okay. In that case, figure out which questions you are getting wrong and use that 30 minutes. You definitely should not have 30 minutes left over. Then if you go through and check everything again, then that's the best thing that you can do. Yeah, 30 minutes left over. That's way too much time to have. I would spend more time on figure out which it is. Is it problem solving? If it's problem solving, spend way more time on that, basically. How much econ content do they actually ask you about? They basically ask you how much you know. So, I mean, like there's starter questions that are like the general questions asked to everybody. And those are basically beginning from what knowledge they expect everybody to have, which is AS level. But beyond that, it's pretty, if you can guide the conversation to somewhere else because you know more, then they will let you take the conversation then. They'll be happy to do that. So it completely depends on how much stuff, yeah. If it's problem solving you're strong, yeah, please spend the full 30 minutes on the problem solving, and I'm sure your grit score will go up at least the 2 to 3 more to push you over 75, yeah, for sure. Okay, so I feel like there's a lot of interesting sort of like interview points that we could talk about, but I think probably for today it's better that everybody focuses on the TSA, so I'm just gonna leave that for a separate time. But yeah, I will, as I said, I'll just go through all these questions that you've posted in the comments and post some answers and get back to you specifically. But yeah, PP interview tips. Yeah, definitely we'll post so much stuff about the interview stuff straight after TSA so that you can get right into it. And also, if you haven't started like econ revision, econ readings, like current affairs, econ stuff that you should know by now, maybe, then I'm going to maybe try and post some shortcuts for you as well. What would be considered a bad score? I mean, it's not so much a bad score as like a more competitive score is obviously 38 plus, I would say. Do they ask you a lot on your personal statement? But because of the online interview format, they don't really ask you about your personal statement anymore. They used to ask you. So when I had my interview, I had a separate one just for my personal statement, but not anymore. And what's the PP score requirements? Yeah, so top 15%, so 38. For PP, it's slightly lower, I think. So it should be like 36 to 37. And then for E&M, slightly higher, 38-ish. But that's purely because the E&M kids are required to take maths, so they're generally considered to do better in the problem solving. Don't know if that's actually the case, but yeah, that's the trend. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, I think. But yeah, please feel free to like chat and talk in the Discord, and I will address all of these questions. Just go through all that structure again. I'm sure you're all going to be absolutely fine. I think that just be confident, believe in yourself. It's always the people who are more confident who tend to do better. Don't doubt yourself. If this is made for your age group, this is made for you guys to do well in. So, you know, so wishing you all like so much luck. But you've put in the work, so I think you'll be, hopefully all of you will get the result that you want. But even if not, you know, I think even having come this far would have, you know, is such an achievement, really it is. I know people go on about that a lot, but like honestly, it is a big thing. So I really hope that all of you do so well tomorrow. We'll be crossing my fingers for all of you. So, and please, yeah, after the exam, yeah, let me know how it all went for you. And then, yeah, I will see you hopefully in the interview videos, then the, you know, econ videos and whatever, A-level videos and whatever else that you might need going on. So yeah, thank you all for joining the stream. And if you all want to just like post any other last minute questions that you want the answers to, I will definitely, yeah, answer them all. And yeah, I'm really sorry for I'm shaky with technology. So, but yeah, okay. Good luck, everyone. I will see you after the TSA. And yeah, I'll be posting those answers shortly. Bye. Do I just click this?
Just stop.